The major scale, also known as the Ionian mode, has 7 notes. If we label each note with a number, you get the scale degrees 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It doesn't matter what the tonic note of our major scale is, it always has the scale degrees 1 to 7. For example, C major has the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, with the 7 scale degrees we mentioned. The major scale is useful as a point of reference for all other scales or modes. The focus of this video is the Lydian mode. It is also known as the 4th mode of the major scale. It has the scale degrees 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, and 7. C Lydian therefore has the notes C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, and B. As you can see, the only difference between the major scale and the Lydian mode is the sharp 4 note. This note will be important in defining our Lydian chord progressions that we create later on. It gives the Lydian mode its floaty, dreamlike brightness that is elevated beyond the standard major scale. This particular sound isn't used a lot in pop or rock, but will be recognizable from the huge amounts of film scores and soundtracks that use it. A lot of songs use Lydian for a small part of the song, maybe a verse or a chorus, and then go back to another mode or key. If you need more help with modes, then check out our video in the description below. You can use the notes from a scale or mode to create a series of chords. These chords are what make up a key in songwriting. The most basic chords are constructed with 3 notes and are called triads. They will be either major, minor, diminished, or augmented. Let's use the C Lydian mode we saw earlier to construct our chords. To create our first chord, we take the first note, which is C, and then skip a note, which takes us to E, and then skip a note from E, which gets us to G. These 3 notes will create a triad. In this case, C, E, and G create C major. This is our 1 chord. Then we move on to the next note and start again. In C Lydian, the next note is D. If we skip a note from D, we have F sharp. Skip a note from F sharp and we get to A. D, F sharp, and A create a D major chord. This becomes our 2 chord. We then repeat the process for the remaining notes of the Lydian mode to generate a set of 7 chords. Note how we have repeated the notes twice here to make constructing the chords easier to visualize. This gives us the following chords. 1 is C major, 2 is D major, 3 is E minor, 4 is F sharp diminished, 5 is G major, 6 is A minor, and 7 is B minor. Let's now look at some common chord progressions using this pool of chords. Although we're in the key of C Lydian, remember that the Roman numeral system means you can use these progressions in any key you like. Just work out your pool of 7 chords and use the progressions in the same Roman numeral order. The key to creating Lydian sounding chord progressions is to use chords that have the sharp 4 note in them. As we saw earlier, this is the only note that is separating Lydian from the major scale. So if you want to make clear what mode you are in, then keep coming back to chords with that defining note. The basic Lydian triads that have the sharp 4 note in them are 2, 4, and 7. The simplest and most common way to establish a Lydian sound is to have a repetitive vamp between the 1 chord and the 2 chord. We'll use C Lydian in our examples. Here's how that sounds. The reason this simple chord progression is strongly Lydian is because it takes us from the 1 chord, which anchors the key, and then to the 2 chord, which has the sharp 4 note in it. This makes it clearly Lydian and not major/Ionian. Because it doesn't deviate from these 2 chords, there is no ambiguity in the progression. We are in Lydian. This 1 to 2 scaffolding is used widely in the most common Lydian chord progressions. Before we move to the next chord progression, I'd like to thank you for choosing to watch this video. We rely on your kind support to keep the channel running. If you are able to help us, we now have channel memberships and super thanks available. These allow us to keep on making songwriting content that is available to everyone. Click on Thanks and Join below this video to find out more. Let's now introduce the 3 chord. The 3 chord can be easily used in Lydian progressions because it shares 2 notes in common with the 1 chord. Because of this, it won't pull the listener away from the Lydian sound. Here is a basic 1, 2, 3 progression. Listen out for the escalator effect that having the chords in number order creates. Another chord which is strongly Lydian is the 7 chord. It has the sharp 4 note in it and also has 2 notes in common with the 2 chord. Let's use these 4 chords in a couple of common Lydian chord progressions. Every mode has a major scale with the same notes. For example, C Lydian has the notes C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, and B, and G major / Ionian has the notes G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. This means that they also share the same pool of 7 chords. They just have different Roman numerals because they are in a different order. This makes modal chord progressions harmonically unstable. Depending on what chords you focus your progressions on, which is known as the tonal center, will draw the listener's ear into a certain key. You can use the same set of chords, but change what key it feels like the song is in. There is always some subjectivity with modal music as to what key you are in, but this is particularly strong with Lydian. This is because the 5 chord in Lydian, which generally has an important role in major sounding chord progressions, is the 1 chord in its relative major scale, and the 1 chord is the same as the 4 chord, another important chord in major progressions. For example, in C Lydian, the 1 to 5 progression uses C major and G major. In the key of G major, this would be 4 to 1. This instability means that the use of the 5 chord in Lydian can very easily begin to sound like the tonal center and pull your progression into the major / Ionian key. You can of course use this confusion to your advantage. If you like the ambiguous nature of this, then use it in your song or don't worry about it at all. But it is worth considering, and if you want to just stay with the Lydian sound, then it is easiest to avoid the 5 chord altogether and center your song around 1 and 2. Here are some more common Lydian chord progressions that use the 5 chord. See what you think about the tonal center of these. So far we have only used basic triads in our Lydian progressions, but you are of course free to use different chord types in your Lydian songs. You can experiment with this on any of the chords, but where it is particularly interesting is in introducing or emphasizing the sharp 4 note. As you understand now, this will reinforce the Lydian sound. There are many ways to do this, so what we discuss here won't be exhaustive. The 3 chord doesn't have the sharp 4 note in it. If we add this note to the 3 chord, we create a minor add 9 chord. Here's a previous example with the 3 add 9 this time around. If we take the 5 chord with its various problems that we discussed and add the sharp 4 note, it becomes a major 7th chord. Here's a previous progression with the 5 major 7th chord. How do you feel it affects the tonal center this time around? Watch the video on screen now to better understand all 7 of the major scale modes.